She was abandoned to be a struggling single mother of two by the billionaire CEO. Now she's the judge deciding his custody case of his new son. Your Honor, my client Alexander Montgomery is a devoted father who has never missed a single visitation with his son Lucas. He provides excellent financial support, maintains a stable home environment, and has the resources to give this child every advantage in life. The judge looked down from her bench at the confident attorney, then shifted her gaze to the impeccably dressed man sitting at the defendant's table. Something flickered in her dark eyes as recognition dawned like a lightning strike. "Mr. Montgomery," she said, her voice carefully controlled despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "You claim to be a devoted father who has never abandoned a child." Alexander Montgomery looked up at the judge for the first time, confident in his legal team's ability to secure custody of his 6-year-old son. "That's correct, Your Honor. I believe children deserve their father's love and protection." "Interesting." Judge Olivia Bennett's voice carried a weight that made the entire courtroom fall silent. "Because 7 years ago, you left a pregnant woman with a toddler and never looked back. You abandoned 2 children who needed their father's love and protection. Those children, Mr. Montgomery, were yours." The gavel slipped from her hand, clattering against the bench as 7 years of buried pain crashed over her like a tsunami. The man who had destroyed her life was sitting in her courtroom, asking her to grant him custody of another child while his own children waited at home, unknown and unloved by their biological father. Have you ever been abandoned by someone you trusted completely? Have you ever had the person who destroyed your life appear before you, asking for mercy they never showed you? This is the story of a woman who lost everything to a man's cowardice, only to rebuild herself into the one person who could decide his fate. It's about justice, second chances, and the incredible power of a mother's determination to rise above the ashes of her broken dreams. If you believe that sometimes the universe has its own way of balancing the scales, hit that like button right now. Because what you're about to hear will show you that karma doesn't always come when you expect it, but it always comes exactly when it's needed most. 7 years earlier, Olivia Bennett sat in the library of Stanford Law School, surrounded by textbooks and case studies while her 18-month-old son Jackson played quietly with wooden blocks on a blanket beside her chair. The late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows, casting golden light across the pages of her constitutional law review. "Mama up." Jackson reached his chubby arms toward her, his dark eyes bright with the innocent demand that only toddlers could make. "Just 5 more minutes, baby," Olivia whispered, glancing around at the other students who were deep in their studies. "Mama needs to finish reading about due process, and then we'll go home for dinner." She was 24 years old, a single mother juggling law school with raising a child, working part-time at the campus bookstore to pay for daycare and groceries. Her life was exhausting but purposeful, driven by the dream of becoming a family court judge who could protect children like Jackson from the injustices of a system that often failed the most vulnerable. "Excuse me, is anyone sitting here?" Olivia looked up to see a tall, strikingly handsome man with steel-gray eyes and the kind of confident smile that suggested he was used to getting whatever he wanted. He gestured to the empty chair across from her table. "It's a library," she said simply. "All the seats are public." "Fair enough." He sat down and opened a business textbook, but Olivia could feel his eyes on her every few minutes as she tried to concentrate on her reading. "Your son is beautiful," he said finally, his voice low enough not to disturb other students. "Thank you." Olivia's response was polite but guarded. She'd learned to be careful about men who showed interest in her situation. Some saw a single mother as an easy target, others as a responsibility they weren't ready for. "I'm Alex Montgomery. Business school, final year." "Olivia Bennett. Law school, second year." "And this handsome fellow?" "Jackson. He's 18 months old." Alex closed his textbook and leaned forward slightly. "It must be challenging, managing law school with a young child." "We managed just fine." Olivia's tone carried a note of defensiveness that came from months of well-meaning comments about how difficult her situation must be. "I didn't mean to imply otherwise. Actually, I'm impressed. Law school is demanding enough without adding parenthood to the mix." Something in his tone made Olivia look up from her books. Alex's expression was genuinely admiring, not pitying or condescending like so many others. "What's your focus in business school?" she asked, softening slightly. corporate finance, and international markets. My family has a company that I'm expected to join after graduation. Expected, fourth-generation family business. Montgomery Industries. We do international shipping and logistics. Olivia recognized the name from business news articles she'd seen. Montgomery Industries was worth billions, a global empire built over nearly a century. That's quite a legacy to inherit. It's quite a responsibility to inherit, Alex corrected. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to build something from scratch, to create my own path instead of following the one that was laid out before I was born. Jackson had crawled over to Alex's chair and was now pulling himself up on the man's pant leg, babbling in the nonsensical language of toddlers. "Hey there, buddy," Alex said, gently helping Jackson stand while keeping him steady. "Are you helping your mama study?" "He's helping by being surprisingly quiet for once," Olivia said, surprised by how naturally Alex interacted with her son. "Kids have good instincts about people. If he likes me, I must be doing something right." Over the following weeks, Alex appeared at the library with increasing frequency, always choosing the table near Olivia's. Their conversations grew longer and more personal, moving from academic subjects to dreams, fears, and the complexities of their very different backgrounds. "You're going to be an amazing lawyer," Alex told her one evening as they walked across campus together, Jackson riding on Alex's shoulders like he'd been doing it his whole life. "What makes you so sure?" "Because you're fighting for something that matters to you. You're not just going through the motions or following someone else's plan. You have purpose, and you don't." Alex was quiet for a moment, watching Jackson point excitedly at a flock of birds in the trees above them. "I have obligation. I have expectation. I'm not sure that's the same thing as purpose." "What would you do if you could choose your own path?" "I'd probably stay in school longer, maybe get an MBA and a law degree. Learn everything I could about business and policy. Then I'd figure out how to use Montgomery Industries to actually make a difference in the world instead of just making money." "That sounds like purpose to me." "It sounds like a fantasy. My father has very specific plans for my future, and those plans don't include extended education or social responsibility initiatives." Their relationship developed slowly, carefully, built on long conversations and shared meals and evenings when Alex would read to Jackson while Olivia studied. He never made her feel like a burden or a complication. Instead, he made her feel like the family she and Jackson had created was something precious and worth protecting. "I love you," he told her one night as they sat on her tiny apartment's fire escape, watching the city lights twinkle below them while Jackson slept inside. "I love you too," she whispered back, meaning it completely for the first time since Jackson's father had disappeared when she told him she was pregnant. "I want to build something with you, Olivia. I want us to be a real family. We already are a real family. I want to make it official. I want to marry you and adopt Jackson and give you both the life you deserve." Olivia felt her heart swell with happiness and hope. "What about your family's expectations? What about Montgomery Industries? They'll have to accept that this is who I choose to be. You and Jackson are more important than any business empire." 6 months later, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. She told Alex over dinner at their favorite tiny Italian restaurant, the same place where he'd first told her he loved her. "Another baby?" Alex's face lit up with genuine joy. "Jackson's going to be such a good big brother. Are you sure you're ready for this? 2 children, law school, all the complications. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Alex reached across the table and took her hands in his. "We're going to have a beautiful family, Olivia. I'm going to be the father Jackson deserves and the father this new baby deserves." But as Olivia's pregnancy progressed and her belly began to show, Alex's family began to express their concerns about his relationship choices. His father, Robert Montgomery, had been politely distant during the early stages of their relationship. Now, with a second grandchild on the way, he became actively hostile. "You're throwing away 4 generations of careful planning for what, exactly?" Robert's voice carried the cold authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. A woman with no family connections, no social standing, no assets of her own. "I'm building a life with someone I love," Alex replied, his jaw tight with tension. "Olivia is brilliant, hardworking, and she's going to be an incredible lawyer. She's black, Alexander. She's a single mother from a working-class background who trapped you with a pregnancy. She didn't trap me with anything. Jackson isn't even my biological child, and I love him like he is. This new baby is something we both wanted. This new baby is a mistake that will cost you everything you've worked for. The board will never accept a family like this. Our clients, our social circles, our business partners expect a certain standard. Then maybe it's time for those standards to change. It's time for you to remember where your loyalties lie. Montgomery Industries employs 12,000 people. The decisions you make affect families across the globe. You don't have the luxury of choosing personal happiness over professional responsibility. These conversations became more frequent and more heated as Olivia entered her second trimester. Alex would come home from family dinners tense and distracted, his usual warmth replaced by a brooding anxiety that Olivia couldn't penetrate. "Talk to me," she said one evening as she found him standing on the fire escape, staring out at the city with an expression she'd never seen before. "It's nothing. Just family business stress." "Alex, I know you. This isn't business stress. This is something else." He turned to face her, and Olivia saw something in his eyes that made her stomach clench with fear. "They want me to end our relationship." "Who wants you to end it?" "My father, my grandmother, the board of directors, everyone who has a say in my future." "And what do you want?" Alex pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "I want you. I want Jackson. I want this baby. I want the life we're building together. Then that's what we'll have." "It's not that simple, Olivia. If I choose you, I lose everything else. My inheritance, my position in the company, my family's support. And if you choose them, then I lose the only thing that's ever made me truly happy." As her pregnancy progressed into the third trimester, the pressure on Alex intensified. Family meetings became ultimatums. Business discussions became threats. The weight of 4 generations of Montgomery expectations pressed down on him like a vice, squeezing out the confidence and determination that had once made him seem unstoppable. "I need some time to think," he told Olivia one night, when she was 7 months pregnant, and Jackson was starting to ask why Alex seemed so sad all the time. "Time to think about what?" "About how to make this work. About how to protect you and the children while still fulfilling my obligations to my family." "There's nothing to think about, Alex. You either choose us or you choose them. But you can't choose both. Maybe I can find a middle ground." "There is no middle ground when it comes to family, Alex. You can't love someone conditionally. You can't be a father when it's convenient and a Montgomery heir when it's profitable." But Alex was drowning in the pressure, losing himself in the impossible choice between love and legacy. He started staying at the library later, coming home after Olivia and Jackson were already asleep. He stopped talking about baby names and nursery plans. He stopped talking about their future altogether. "Alex, what's happening to us?" Olivia asked one morning as she watched him get dressed for another day of classes and family meetings. "Nothing's happening. Everything's fine." "Everything is not fine. You barely look at me anymore. You haven't touched my belly in weeks. Jackson keeps asking if you're mad at him." "I'm not mad at anyone. I'm just trying to figure things out." "There's nothing to figure out. We're having a baby in 2 months. We need to start preparing, start planning, start acting like a family again." Alex sat down on the edge of their bed, his head in his hands. "What if I can't give you what you need? What I need is for you to be present. What I need is for you to choose us every day, not just when it's easy. And what if choosing you means I can't provide for you? What if I lose everything and I can't take care of you and the children? Then we'll figure it out together." "Alex, I didn't fall in love with your trust fund. I fell in love with you. The man who reads bedtime stories to Jackson, who talks about changing the world, who makes me feel like I can accomplish anything. That man might not be able to survive what's coming." "What's coming?" But Alex just kissed her forehead and left for school without answering, leaving Olivia alone with a growing dread that their perfect life was about to crumble around them. The end came suddenly, brutally, without warning or explanation. Olivia woke up one morning in her 8th month of pregnancy to find a note on Alex's pillow and an envelope containing a cashier's check for $50,000. The note was brief and devastating. "Olivia, I can't be the man you need me to be. I can't be the father these children deserve. I'm not strong enough to choose love over legacy, and I'm too weak to keep lying to myself about who I really am. This money will help you get through law school and get settled somewhere new. I won't contact you again, and I need you to not contact me. I'm sorry for everything. Alex." Olivia stared at the note until the words blurred through her tears, until Jackson woke up asking for breakfast and Alex, and she had to somehow explain that Alex wouldn't be coming home anymore. "Where did Alex go, Mama?" Jackson asked, his 2-year-old mind struggling to understand why his favorite person had simply disappeared. "Alex had to go away, baby. Sometimes grown-ups have to make choices that hurt the people they love. Is he coming back?" Olivia looked at her son's trusting face and felt her heart break completely. "No, sweetheart. He's not coming back." That night, Olivia went into premature labor. Stress and heartbreak triggered contractions that sent her to the hospital alone, with Jackson staying overnight with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chun, who had become like a grandmother to them both. Grace Bennett was born 6 weeks early, weighing 4 pounds and fighting for every breath in the NICU, while Olivia sat beside her incubator and wondered how she was going to raise 2 children alone while finishing law school. "She's beautiful," Mrs. Chin said when she brought Jackson to meet his baby sister 3 days later. "She has your strength already. Look at how hard she's fighting." "I don't feel very strong right now," Olivia admitted, holding Jackson on her lap while they watched Grace sleep. "Strength isn't about feeling strong, dear. Strength is about getting up and fighting another day even when you feel like you can't take another step." Olivia spent the next 6 weeks living between the hospital and her apartment, pumping breast milk and studying for finals while Jackson stayed with Mrs. Chun or played quietly in the NICU family room. When Grace was finally strong enough to come home, weighing 6 pounds and breathing on her own, Olivia felt like she was bringing home a miracle. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her daughter as she placed her in the crib that Alex had assembled months earlier. "We're going to be more than okay. Mama's going to build us a life that no one can ever take away." She returned to law school 6 weeks after Grace's birth, carrying a breast pump and baby bottles in her backpack along with case studies and legal briefs. Her professors were sympathetic but clear about expectations. Law school didn't slow down for personal crises. "You're trying to do too much," her study group partner warned her. "Maybe you should consider taking a semester off, getting your life stable before trying to finish your degree." "Taking time off isn't an option," Olivia replied, bouncing Grace in her arms while reviewing notes for their constitutional law exam. "My children need me to succeed, not take breaks." She studied while Grace slept, wrote papers during Jackson's naps, and attended lectures with backup childcare arrangements that sometimes fell through at the last minute. Other students complained about the stress of law school. Olivia was managing the stress of law school plus single motherhood, plus the financial pressure of supporting 2 children on a part-time bookstore salary. The $50,000 Alex had left helped with immediate expenses, but it wasn't enough to last through the remaining 2 years of her education. Olivia applied for every scholarship, grant, and financial aid program available. She worked weekends at a legal clinic, gaining practical experience while earning extra money. She tutored undergrad students in the evenings after Jackson and Grace were asleep. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Mrs. Chun worried as she watched Olivia rushing between feeding Grace and reviewing case notes. "You need rest, you need help." "I need to graduate," Olivia replied. "I need to pass the bar exam. I need to build a career that can support my children." "And what if you make yourself sick? What if you collapse from exhaustion? What good will that degree do your children if you're too burned out to use it?" But Olivia couldn't slow down. Every day that passed was a day closer to graduation, a day closer to financial stability, a day closer to becoming the family court judge she'd dreamed of being. She carried the pain of Alex's abandonment like fuel, using her anger and heartbreak to drive her forward when exhaustion threatened to stop her completely. During her final year of law school, when Jackson was 3 and Grace was 18 months old, Olivia caught the attention of Judge Benjamin Hayes, a family court veteran who guest lectured in her family law seminar. "Ms. Bennett, I'd like to speak with you after class," he said one afternoon following a particularly engaging discussion about child custody law. Olivia packed up her notes while Grace played with wooden blocks in her portable playpen, a familiar sight in her classes by now. "I've been watching your work this semester," Judge Hayes said as the classroom emptied. "Your analysis of custody statutes is sophisticated, your arguments are well-reasoned, and your perspective on child welfare issues is remarkably mature. Thank you, Your Honor. More importantly, I understand you're raising 2 young children while maintaining a 3.8 GPA and working part-time. That level of determination is rare. I don't have a choice." My children depend on me to succeed. Actually, you do have a choice. You could have given up, transferred to an easier school, chosen a less demanding career path. The fact that you didn't tells me everything I need to know about your character. Judge Hayes offered Olivia a paid internship in his chambers during her final semester, followed by a clerkship after graduation that would provide the experience and connections she needed to fast-track her judicial career. Why are you willing to take a chance on me? Olivia asked. Because the best judges aren't the ones who had easy paths to the bench. The best judges are the ones who understand struggle, who fought for justice in their own lives before they ever had the power to fight for justice in others' lives. Olivia graduated from Stanford Law School summa cum laude with Jackson, now 4, and Grace, 2, in the audience wearing matching outfits that Mrs. Chun had sewn specially for the occasion. As she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, Olivia thought about Alex and wondered if he would be proud of what she'd accomplished. Then she dismissed the thought entirely. His pride was irrelevant. She'd built this success for herself and her children, not for the man who'd abandoned them when they needed him most. The bar exam preparation was another mountain to climb while managing 2 energetic young children and starting her clerkship with Judge Hayes. Olivia studied before dawn and after bedtime, drilling herself on legal procedures while Jackson and Grace played around her. "Mama, why do you read so many boring books?" Grace asked one evening, climbing into Olivia's lap while she reviewed evidence law. "Because Mama is learning how to help families who are in trouble. Sometimes parents and children get separated, and judges like the one Mama works for have to decide what's best for the children. Like how Alex left us." The question hit Olivia like a punch to the chest. Grace was too young to remember Alex clearly, but Jackson had told her stories about the man who used to read them bedtime stories and push them on swings at the playground. "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt children. Mama wants to be someone who protects children from those choices. Will you protect us?" "Always. Mama will always protect you and Jackson." Olivia passed the bar exam on her first attempt, scoring in the 95th percentile despite studying with 2 toddlers climbing on her lap. Judge Hayes offered her a permanent position as a staff attorney in the family court system, with a clear path toward judicial appointment if she continued to excel. "You have something special, Olivia," he told her during her performance review 6 months later. "You understand both the legal complexities and the human impact of family court decisions. You see the children first, the law second, and the adults last. That's exactly the perspective we need on the bench. I appreciate your confidence in me, Your Honor, but I'm still relatively inexperienced. Judicial appointments usually go to attorneys with decades of practice." "Usually, yes, but these aren't usual times, and you're not a usual candidate. The governor is looking for fresh perspectives, diverse voices, people who bring real-world experience to the bench. Your story, your struggle, your success despite overwhelming odds, that's exactly what the family court system needs." 2 years later, at the age of 30, Olivia Bennett was appointed to the family court bench as the youngest female judge in the district's history. The appointment ceremony was held in the same courthouse where she would preside over custody cases, divorce proceedings, and child welfare hearings. Jackson, now 6, and Grace, 4, sat in the front row wearing their best clothes and beaming with pride as their mother took the oath of office. "Do you solemnly swear to administer justice without respect to persons, and do equal right to the poor and to the rich, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a judge according to the best of your abilities and understanding, agreeably to the Constitution and laws of the United States?" "I do," Olivia said, her voice strong and clear as she placed her hand on the Bible and looked out at the courtroom that would become her professional home. Judge Benjamin Hayes administered the oath, his voice filled with pride for the protege who had exceeded every expectation. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Honorable Judge Olivia Bennett." The applause was thunderous, but Olivia only heard the voices of her children cheering from the front row. She had done what everyone said was impossible. She had raised 2 children alone while completing one of the most demanding educational programs in the country, had built a legal career from nothing, and had achieved her dream of becoming a family court judge. That evening, As she tucked Jackson and Grace into their beds in the small but comfortable house she'd been able to buy with her judicial salary, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "Mama, are you really a judge now?" Grace asked sleepily. "Yes, baby. Mama is really a judge now. Will you help other kids like you helped us?" "That's the plan, sweetheart. That's exactly the plan." 7 years had passed since Alex Montgomery had walked out of their lives with a note and a check. 7 years of struggle, growth, transformation, and success. Olivia had built herself into everything she dreamed of becoming, and she'd done it without him. She had no idea that tomorrow morning, a case file would land on her desk with a familiar name that would bring her face to face with the man who had once destroyed her world. The irony of fate was about to reveal itself in ways she could never have imagined. Judge Olivia Bennett arrived at the courthouse early on Monday morning, as was her custom, to review the week's cases before the courtroom filled with lawyers, families, and the complex dramas of human relationships gone wrong. Her chambers were modest but professional, decorated with her law degree, judicial appointment certificate, and photos of Jackson and Grace at various stages of their childhood. At 8 and 6 years old, her children had grown into remarkable human beings despite the circumstances of their early years. Jackson was thoughtful and protective, already showing signs of the analytical mind that might one day make him a lawyer or judge like his mother. Grace was artistic and empathetic, always drawing pictures of families and asking questions about why some children didn't live with both their parents. "Good morning, Your Honor." Rebecca Martinez, her court clerk, entered with a stack of case files and a steaming cup of coffee. "We have 6 cases on the docket today, 3 custody hearings, and 3 adoption proceedings. Any emergency motions or last-minute changes?" One new case was added Friday afternoon. High-profile custody dispute, multiple attorneys involved. The plaintiff is requesting immediate temporary custody pending a full hearing. Olivia accepted the case file and glanced at the cover sheet. Montgomery versus Montgomery, case number 2024, FC, 1847, custody petition. She opened the file and began reading the preliminary documents, noting the expensive law firm representing the plaintiff and the equally prestigious firm representing the defendant. High-profile custody cases were always challenging, involving wealthy families with resources to hire the best lawyers and drag proceedings out for months. "What's the basic situation?" Olivia asked, scanning the petition. "Alexander Montgomery, CEO of Montgomery Industries, is seeking custody of his 6-year-old son Lucas. He's divorced from Sophia Montgomery, who currently has primary custody. The father claims the mother is unfit due to alcohol abuse and neglect." Olivia's pen paused over the legal pad where she was making notes. Montgomery Industries. The name was familiar, though she couldn't immediately place why. She continued reading, absorbing the details of what appeared to be a typical wealthy divorce turned ugly, and the mother's response. She denies all allegations and counterclaims that the father has a pattern of abandoning his responsibilities and should not be granted custody. There are some interesting character witness statements in her file. I'll review everything before the hearing. What time are we starting? 10 o'clock. Both parties will be present with their legal teams. Olivia spent the next hour reviewing the case files, making notes about the key issues and legal precedents that would guide her decision. The Montgomery case was complex, with allegations and counter-allegations that would require careful consideration of the evidence, and, most importantly, the best interests of 6-year-old Lucas. As she read the mother's counterpetition, certain phrases caught her attention. Pattern of abandonment, history of walking away from family responsibilities, inability to commit to long-term relationships. The language was specific enough to suggest there might be documented evidence of previous abandonment. At 9:45, Olivia made her way to the courtroom, her judicial robes flowing behind her as she prepared to preside over another day of family disputes and custody decisions. The courtroom was fuller than usual, indicating the high-profile nature of the Montgomery case. All rise. The Honorable Judge Olivia Bennett presiding. The Family Court of San Francisco County is now in session. Olivia took her place at the bench and surveyed the assembled attorneys and parties. The plaintiff's table was occupied by 3 lawyers in expensive suits, clearly representing someone with significant financial resources. Be seated. We'll begin with case number 2024, FC 1847, Montgomery versus Montgomery. This is a custody hearing regarding Lucas Montgomery, age 6. Will counsel please state their appearances for the record? Jonathan Pierce of Pierce, Williams and Associates, representing the plaintiff, Alexander Montgomery, announced the lead attorney at the plaintiff's table. Susan Crawford of Crawford and Associates, representing the defendant, Sophia Montgomery, replied the attorney at the defendant's table. Thank you. Is the plaintiff present in the courtroom? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Montgomery is here and ready to proceed. Olivia looked toward the plaintiff's table, expecting to see the typical wealthy businessman seeking custody of his child. What she saw instead was a face that sent shock waves through her entire body. Alexander Montgomery stood up slowly, his steel-gray eyes meeting hers across the courtroom for the first time in 7 years. He was older, more polished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. But it was unmistakably him. The man who had abandoned her when she was pregnant with Grace. The man who had never met his own daughter. The man who had walked away from Jackson when the boy was barely old enough to remember him. The gavel slipped from her hand, clattering against the bench as 7 years of buried pain, anger, and betrayal crashed over her like a tsunami. Every carefully constructed wall she'd built around those memories crumbled in an instant. Alex's face went pale as recognition dawned. His confident posture wavered as he stared at the woman in judicial robes who held his future in her hands. The last time he'd seen Olivia, she'd been a pregnant law student struggling to make ends meet. Now she was Judge Olivia Bennett, presiding over his custody case with the power to grant or deny him access to his son. The irony was so complete, so perfectly orchestrated by fate, that for a moment no one in the courtroom moved or spoke. The abandoned pregnant girlfriend had become the judge. The man who had walked away from his own children was now asking for custody of another child. And the woman who had rebuilt her life from the ashes of his betrayal was the only person who could decide his future as a father. Your Honor, are you all right? Attorney Pierce asked, concern evident in his voice as he noticed the judge's obvious distress. Olivia forced herself to regain composure, drawing on 7 years of professional training and personal strength. I'm fine. Please be seated, Mr. Montgomery. Alex sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. She could see questions, shock, and something that might have been regret in his expression. But what she didn't see was recognition of the magnitude of what he'd done, the lives he'd destroyed, the children he'd abandoned. Before we proceed with this hearing, Olivia said, her voice carefully controlled, I need to address a potential conflict of interest. Mr. Montgomery, do you recognize me? Alex's attorney immediately became alert, sensing something significant was happening. Your Honor, is there some prior relationship between you and my client? Mr. Montgomery, Olivia repeated, ignoring the attorney's question. Do you recognize me? Alex stood again, his voice hoarse with shock. Olivia. My God, Olivia. That's Judge Bennett to you, Mr. Montgomery. And yes, we have a history. A history that might be very relevant to these custody proceedings. Your Honor, Attorney Pierce interjected. If there's a prior relationship that could affect your impartiality, perhaps we should discuss recusal. Perhaps we should, Olivia agreed. But first, I think this court and all parties involved deserve to understand exactly what kind of father Mr. Montgomery has been in the past. She looked directly at Alex, seeing him clearly for the first time in 7 years. Gone was the confident young man who had once promised to love and protect her family. In his place sat a polished businessman who had built his success on the foundation of abandoned responsibilities. Mr. Montgomery, you're here today asking this court to grant you custody of your 6-year-old son Lucas, correct? Yes, Your Honor. And you're claiming to be a devoted father who has never abandoned a child. Alex's face went white as he realized the trap that fate had set for him. Your Honor, I can explain. I'm sure you can. Because 7 years ago, you abandoned a pregnant woman and her toddler son. You left a note and a check and disappeared from their lives completely. Those children, Mr. Montgomery, were yours. The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. Alex's attorney looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Sophia Montgomery's attorney was frantically taking notes, realizing that her client's case had just been dramatically strengthened. Is this true, Mr. Montgomery? Attorney Pierce asked his client, his voice tight, with barely controlled panic. Alex looked around the courtroom at the faces staring at him with a mixture of shock and judgment. Then he looked back at Olivia, seeing not just the judge who held his fate in her hands, but the woman whose life he had destroyed in his moment of cowardice. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "that was a long time ago. I was young and scared, and I made terrible mistakes. But I'm a different person now. Are you?" Olivia's voice carried 7 years of pain and anger that she'd thought she'd buried. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're the same man who walks away from children when fatherhood becomes inconvenient. The same man who chooses his own comfort over a child's need for their father. You don't understand the pressure I was under, the impossible position my family put me in. I understand that you had 2 children who needed their father, and you chose to abandon them instead of fighting for them." The weight of this revelation settled over the courtroom like a heavy blanket. Everyone present was witnessing something unprecedented, a judge confronting the man who had personally wronged her, with the power to exact justice or mercy entirely in her hands. "Your Honor," Attorney Crawford said carefully, "while this information is certainly relevant to Mr. Montgomery's character and fitness as a parent, perhaps this matter would be better served by your recusal and assignment to another judge." Olivia considered the suggestion. Professional ethics demanded that she remove herself from any case where she had personal involvement. But something deeper than professional obligation was at work here. This wasn't just about one custody case. This was about justice for all the children who had been abandoned, all the mothers who had been left to struggle alone, all the families that had been destroyed by men who chose convenience over commitment. "I'll take this matter under advisement," she said finally. "We'll recess for 30 minutes while I consider how to proceed." As the courtroom cleared, Olivia remained at the bench, staring at the case file that had brought her face to face with her past. 7 years ago, she'd been a powerless law student, abandoned and pregnant with no recourse against the man who had destroyed her life. Now she was the judge. Now she had the power. Now Alexander Montgomery's future as a father rested entirely in her hands. The question was, what would she do with that power? During the 30-minute recess, Olivia sat alone in her chambers, staring at the case file that had turned her world upside down. The professional part of her mind knew she should recuse herself immediately. No judge could preside fairly over a case involving someone who had personally wronged them. But another part of her, the part that had spent 7 years wondering if Alex had ever faced consequences for his actions, wanted to see this through. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Rebecca entered cautiously. "Your Honor, there are several reporters outside asking for comment about the Montgomery case. Word has gotten out about the connection between you and the plaintiff." "Of course it has." Olivia rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of public scrutiny adding to an already impossible situation. "What's the protocol for judicial recusal in family court?" The case would be reassigned randomly to another family court judge. Given the high-profile nature and complexity, it could take weeks to get a new hearing date. And in the meantime, temporary custody arrangements remain in place. Lucas stays with his mother pending the rescheduled hearing. Olivia thought about 6-year-old Lucas, caught in the middle of his parents' battles, waiting for adults to decide his future. Then she thought about Grace, also 6 years old, who had never met her biological father. 2 children, the same age, with very different relationships to the same man. "Rebecca, I need you to pull all public records related to Alexander Montgomery. Business filings, marriage licenses, divorce proceedings. I want to understand the full scope of his pattern before I make any decisions. Your Honor, if you're planning to continue presiding over this case, I should warn you that your personal history with Mr. Montgomery will be scrutinized by every legal publication in the country. Let them scrutinize. The question isn't whether I have a history with Alexander Montgomery. The question is whether that history helps or hinders my ability to make the right decision for Lucas Montgomery." 20 minutes later, Rebecca returned with a thick folder of documents. "Your Honor, you're going to want to see this." Olivia opened the folder and began reading. Alexander Montgomery had married Sophia Richardson just 8 months after abandoning Olivia. Lucas had been born exactly 9 months later, making him the same age as Grace. The timeline suggested that Alex had moved seamlessly from one relationship to another, possibly overlapping them. "There's more," Rebecca said quietly. Sophia Montgomery's divorce filing includes allegations that he frequently traveled during Lucas's early years, missing important milestones and leaving her to raise their son essentially alone. So he established a pattern of emotional abandonment even within his marriage. It appears so. There are also financial records showing he fought aggressively to minimize child support during the divorce proceedings, despite his substantial wealth. Olivia felt her anger building as she read through the documents. Alex wasn't just a man who had made one terrible mistake in his youth. He was a man who had consistently chosen his own comfort and convenience over his responsibilities as a father. Your Honor, Rebecca said hesitantly, there's something else. I found birth certificates for 2 children born to Olivia Bennett. Jackson Bennett, born 8 years ago, and Grace Bennett, born 6 years ago. The birth certificates list no father. Those are my children, Olivia said simply. They're also Mr. Montgomery's children, aren't they? Biologically, yes. In every way that matters, no? Alexander Montgomery has never been a father to Jackson or Grace. Rebecca was quiet for a moment, processing the full scope of the situation. Your Honor, what are you going to do? I'm going to make sure that Lucas Montgomery gets the protection that Jackson and Grace never had. I'm going to make sure that any man who wants custody of a child has to prove he's worthy of that responsibility. And Mr. Montgomery's previous abandonment is directly relevant to his fitness as a parent, which means it's not just permissible evidence, it's essential evidence. When court reconvened, the gallery was fuller than before. Word had spread about the dramatic revelation, and legal observers, reporters, and curious onlookers filled every available seat. Olivia returned to the bench with renewed purpose, her decision made. This court will continue with the scheduled hearing, she announced. While I have a personal history with Mr. Montgomery, that history is directly relevant to the questions before this court. Mr. Montgomery's pattern of behavior toward his children is the very issue we're here to determine. Attorney Pierce stood immediately. Your Honor, I must object to your continuing with this case. The appearance of bias is overwhelming. Mr. Pierce, your objection is noted for the record. However, I would argue that my knowledge of Mr. Montgomery's history makes me uniquely qualified to assess his credibility and fitness as a parent. Now, let's proceed with the evidence. Your Honor, Attorney Crawford interjected. Before we continue, I'd like to call a witness who can speak to Mr. Montgomery's pattern of abandoning parental responsibilities. Objection, Pierce said immediately. Irrelevant and prejudicial. Overruled. A parent's history of fulfilling or abandoning parental duties is absolutely relevant to custody decisions. You may call your witness, Ms. Crawford. I called Dr. Patricia Williams, child psychologist. A professional-looking woman in her 50s approached the witness stand and was sworn in. Dr. Williams, you've reviewed the psychological evaluations of Lucas Montgomery, correct? Yes, I have. What did you find? Lucas shows signs of attachment disorder and anxiety consistent with inconsistent parenting. He has difficulty trusting adult authority figures and exhibits behavioral problems when separated from his primary caregiver. In your professional opinion, what might cause these symptoms in a 6-year-old child? Typically, we see these patterns when a child has experienced abandonment or inconsistent care from one or both parents. The child learns not to trust that adults will remain present and protective. Pierce stood to object, but Olivia gestured for him to sit down. Dr. Williams, in your evaluation of Lucas, did he express any specific fears or concerns about his father? Lucas told me that his daddy goes away a lot, and that he's afraid his daddy might not come back like before. He also mentioned that his daddy promises to attend events, but often doesn't show up. Olivia made notes while the testimony continued. Lucas's symptoms mirrored the behavioral issues she'd seen in Jackson during his early years, when he would ask repeatedly if people were going to go away like Alex did. Dr. Williams, have you seen similar patterns in other children whose fathers have histories of abandonment? Yes, frequently. Children who have been abandoned by a parent, even very young children, often develop hypervigilance about subsequent relationships. They're constantly watching for signs that the parent might leave again. And what's your recommendation regarding custody in cases where a parent has a documented history of abandonment? I typically recommend supervised visitation with intensive family therapy before considering any expansion of custody. The child's sense of security must be rebuilt gradually. When Dr. Williams stepped down, Pierce called his first witness for the defense. I call Alexander Montgomery to the stand. Alex approached the witness stand with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to boardrooms and business negotiations. But Olivia could see the tension in his shoulders, the uncertainty in his eyes as he faced the woman whose life he had destroyed. Mr. Montgomery, please state your full name and occupation for the record. Alexander James Montgomery. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Montgomery Industries. Mr. Montgomery, tell the court about your relationship with your son Lucas. I love Lucas more than anything in the world. He's a bright, wonderful boy, and I want to be the father he deserves. And why are you seeking expanded custody? Because I believe Lucas needs his father's influence in his life. I can provide stability, resources, and opportunities that will help him reach his full potential. Pierce continued with softball questions designed to present Alex as a devoted father who had simply been victimized by a vindictive ex-wife. But Olivia was preparing her own line of questioning. Mr. Montgomery, she said when Pierce finished, you testified that you want to be the father Lucas deserves. Tell me about your experience being a father to your other children. Pierce shot to his feet. Objection. Mr. Montgomery has no other children. Actually, Mr. Pierce, he does. 2 of them. Mr. Montgomery, please answer the question. Alex's face went pale as he realized he was trapped between perjury and public humiliation. Your Honor, those children. Those children have names, Mr. Montgomery. Jackson and Grace. Your son and daughter. Tell this court about your relationship with them. I don't have a relationship with them. Why not? Because I made mistakes when I was younger. I wasn't ready to be a father. You weren't ready? So you abandoned a pregnant woman and a toddler because fatherhood was inconvenient for you. It wasn't that simple. Then explain it to me. Explain to this court how a man who abandoned 2 children can be trusted with custody of a 3rd child. Alex looked around the courtroom, seeing the faces of people judging him, evaluating his character, weighing his fitness as a parent. I was under enormous pressure from my family. They didn't approve of my relationship with Olivia. They threatened to cut me off financially if I didn't end things. So you chose money over your children? I chose what I thought was best for everyone involved. Best for everyone? Mr. Montgomery, do you know what happened to Jackson and Grace after you left them? I assumed they were fine. I left money to help with expenses. You left $50,000 to support 2 children through their entire childhood. Do you have any idea what it costs to raise a child? I was young. I didn't understand the full scope of the financial responsibility. Olivia felt her professional composure slipping as she faced the man whose selfishness had shaped her entire adult life. Let me tell you what happened to your children, Mr. Montgomery. Their mother worked 3 jobs while finishing law school. Jackson learned to change his baby sister's diapers because his mother was studying for exams. Grace spent her first 2 years in daycare because her mother couldn't afford to stay home with her. Your Honor, Pierce interrupted desperately. This line of questioning is prejudicial and irrelevant to the current custody case. On the contrary, Mr. Pierce, this line of questioning goes directly to your client's pattern of behavior and fitness as a parent. Mr. Montgomery, did you ever attempt to contact your children after you left them? No. Did you ever send birthday cards, Christmas presents, any indication that you remembered they existed? No. Did you ever pay child support beyond that initial $50,000? No. Did you even know if they were healthy, safe, or happy? No. But you expect this court to believe you've changed? That you're now ready to be a devoted father to Lucas when you couldn't be bothered to acknowledge the existence of Jackson and Grace? Alex's voice broke as he answered. I know I was wrong. I know I failed them. But Lucas is different. I'm different now. Different how? Because you're older? Because you're wealthier? Because abandoning Lucas would be more difficult now that you're a public figure? Because I understand what I lost when I walked away from my family. Olivia paused, studying Alex's face for signs of genuine remorse or calculated manipulation. Tell me what you lost, Mr. Montgomery. I lost the chance to be Jackson's father. I lost the chance to watch Grace grow up. I lost the chance to be part of a real family instead of just playing a role that my parents wanted me to play. And when did you come to this realization? When Lucas was born. When I held him for the first time and realized that I'd held Jackson the same way, and I'd thrown that away for nothing. For nothing? I thought you said you were under pressure from your family. The pressure was real, But I should have been stronger. I should have chosen my children over my inheritance. Olivia felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but she pushed it aside. Mr. Montgomery, you claim to understand what you lost when you abandoned Jackson and Grace. Do you know what they lost? Their father. They lost more than that. They lost their sense of security. They lost their trust in adult promises. Jackson still asks why some daddies leave and never come back. Grace draws pictures of families and always makes sure to include both parents because she's afraid that families with missing parents are broken. Alex's eyes filled with tears as he absorbed the impact of his choices on the children he'd never known. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did to them. Your apology is 7 years too late, Mr. Montgomery. But it might not be too late for Lucas. The question is, what guarantee do we have that you won't abandon him the same way you abandoned Jackson and Grace? Because I won't. Because I've learned from my mistakes. Have you? Mr. Montgomery, according to your ex-wife's testimony, you missed Lucas's first steps, his first words, and his first day of school because of business travel. You've missed 17 of his birthday parties and most of his school performances. How is that different from abandonment? Alex struggled to answer as the pattern of his behavior became undeniable. I was trying to build financial security for our family. The same excuse you used when you abandoned Jackson and Grace. You were building your future with Montgomery Industries. That's not the same thing, isn't it? In both cases, you prioritized your career and your comfort over your responsibilities as a father. In both cases, you left the mother to raise the children essentially alone. The courtroom was completely silent as Alex faced the truth about his repeated failures as a father. The man who had confidently entered the courtroom expecting to win custody was being systematically dismantled by the woman whose life he had destroyed. Mr. Montgomery, Olivia continued, if I were to grant you custody of Lucas, what assurance can you give this court that you won't disappear from his life the moment fatherhood becomes inconvenient again? I can't give you guarantees about the future, Your Honor, but I can promise that I understand now what I didn't understand then. Children need their fathers to be present, not just financially supportive. And yet you're asking for custody while your own children, Jackson and Grace, have never received that presence from you. Because I didn't know how to find them. Because I thought it was too late to fix what I'd broken. It's never too late to be a father, Mr. Montgomery. But it requires more than showing up in court with expensive lawyers. It requires daily commitment, sacrifice, and putting your children's needs before your own comfort. Alex nodded, tears streaming down his face as he finally understood the magnitude of what he'd done and what he'd lost. You're right. I failed Jackson and Grace. I failed as their father in every possible way. Yes, you did. And the question before this court is whether Lucas should be protected from the same failure. When Alex stepped down from the witness stand, the courtroom felt heavy with the weight of revealed truth. The confident businessman who had entered seeking custody had been transformed into a broken man confronting the consequences of his choices. Attorney Crawford called her final witness. I call Sophia Montgomery. Sophia approached the stand with the exhausted bearing of a woman who had been fighting for her child's welfare for months. She was elegantly dressed, but showed the strain of prolonged legal battles. Mrs. Montgomery, please describe your ex-husband's involvement in Lucas's daily life during your marriage. Alex was rarely present. He traveled constantly for business, even when I begged him to stay home for important events. Lucas learned not to expect his father to show up for anything. Can you give specific examples? Alex missed Lucas's first steps because he was in Tokyo on business. He missed his first words because he was at a board meeting. On Lucas's 4th birthday, Alex promised to come home early for the party, but he didn't arrive until after Lucas was asleep. How did Lucas react to these disappointments? He stopped asking when Daddy was coming home. He stopped talking about his father at school events. He learned to protect himself by not expecting anything. Mrs. Montgomery, did your ex-husband ever mention having other children? Never. I didn't know Jackson and Grace existed until today. What's your reaction to learning that your ex-husband abandoned 2 children before marrying you? Sophia looked directly at Alex, her voice filled with anger and betrayal. It explains everything. Why he was so distant during my pregnancy. Why he seemed uncomfortable with the responsibilities of fatherhood. Why he always seemed like he was looking for an excuse to leave. What do you want for Lucas? I want him to have a father who chooses him every day, not just when it's convenient. I want him to have stability and security and the knowledge that his parents will be there when he needs them. When the testimony concluded, Olivia called for a brief recess to consider her decision. But before she could adjourn, Alex stood up at the defendant's table. Your Honor, may I say something? Mr. Montgomery, you've already given your testimony. Not as a witness. As a father who just realized what fatherhood actually means. Olivia gestured for him to proceed, curious about what he might say now that the truth had been completely exposed. I came here today expecting to win custody of Lucas because I thought being a father meant providing financial support and showing up occasionally. I thought I deserved custody because I have money and resources. Alex's voice was steady but filled with emotion. But listening to the testimony about Jackson and Grace, understanding how my abandonment affected them, seeing the damage I've caused, I realized that I don't deserve custody of any child until I've proven I can be the father my existing children needed me to be. The courtroom stirred with surprise as Alex essentially argued against his own case. Your Honor, I'm withdrawing my petition for custody of Lucas. Pierce jumped to his feet. Your Honor, my client is obviously emotional and not thinking clearly. I request a recess so we can discuss this decision. Mr. Pierce, your client is an adult who can make his own decisions. Mr. Montgomery, are you certain about withdrawing your petition? I'm certain. Lucas deserves better than a father who has to be forced by a court to understand his responsibilities. And Jackson and Grace deserve to know their father before I try to be a father to anyone else. Sophia began crying with relief as the custody battle that had consumed months of her life suddenly ended. Furthermore, Alex continued, I'd like to ask this court's guidance about how I might begin to build relationships with Jackson and Grace, if their mother is willing to allow it. All eyes turned to Olivia, who found herself in the unprecedented position of being asked, as both a judge and a mother, to determine whether the man who had abandoned her children deserved a chance to know them. Mr. Montgomery, that decision isn't mine to make from the bench. That decision belongs to Jackson and Grace's mother, and ultimately to Jackson and Grace themselves. Then I'm asking Olivia Bennett, not Judge Bennett, if she would consider giving me the chance to try to be the father I should have been 7 years ago. The courtroom held its breath as Olivia faced the most difficult decision of her life. Professional ethics demanded that she separate her role as a judge from her role as a mother. But the man who had destroyed her family was now asking for the chance to rebuild it. This court is in recess for 15 minutes, she announced. When we return, I'll render my decision on the custody matter and address any other issues that arise. In her chambers, Olivia sat alone with the weight of multiple decisions pressing down on her. As a judge, she had to determine what was best for Lucas. As a mother, she had to decide whether Alex deserved access to Jackson and Grace. As a woman, she had to confront 7 years of pain and determine whether forgiveness was possible. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Rebecca entered with a concerned expression. Your Honor, there are 2 children in the hallway who say they're looking for their mother. Jackson and Grace Bennett. Olivia's heart stopped. What are they doing here? Apparently, their after-school program called when you didn't pick them up at the usual time. The director brought them here because they knew you worked late sometimes. Send them in. Jackson and Grace entered the chambers cautiously, still wearing their school clothes and backpacks. They looked around the formal office with wide eyes before focusing on their mother. Mama, why are you wearing that black dress? Grace asked, referring to Olivia's judicial robes. Because Mama is working as a judge today, helping families make important decisions. Are you helping a family right now? Jackson asked with the intuitive wisdom of an 8-year-old. Yes, baby. I'm helping a family figure out what's best for a little boy named Lucas. How old is Lucas? Grace wanted to know. He's 6, just like you. Grace's eyes lit up with interest. Does he have a mommy and daddy? Olivia felt her heart clench as she realized the conversation was heading toward territory she wasn't prepared to navigate. He has a mommy who loves him very much. His daddy is trying to figure out how to be a better father. Like how Alex left us. Jackson asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a confession. Despite Olivia's efforts to shield her children from the details of their abandonment, Jackson remembered enough to understand that fathers sometimes left. Jackson, how much do you remember about Alex? I remember he used to read us stories and push me on the swing. I remember he was really tall and he had gray eyes like mine. And I remember he went away and never came back. Grace nodded solemnly. I don't remember him, but Jackson told me stories about the daddy who used to live with us. Olivia knelt down to her children's level, seeing in their faces the same gray eyes that had stared at her from the witness stand an hour earlier. Jackson, Grace, there's something I need to tell you about Alex. He's here, in this building. He's the daddy of the little boy I'm trying to help. Jackson's eyes widened with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Our Alex? The one who left us. Yes, sweetheart. And he's been asking if he can meet you both. If he can try to be the daddy he should have been before. Why didn't he try before? Grace asked with the direct honesty of a 6-year-old. Because he was scared and confused, and he made some very bad choices. But now he says he understands how much he hurt us and he wants to try to fix it. Jackson was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the seriousness he brought to all important matters. Do you think we should let him try, Mama? I think that's a decision you and Grace get to make together. You don't have to see him if you don't want to. And if you do decide to meet him, it would be here, in a safe place, with me right beside you. What if he leaves again? Grace asked, voicing the fear that had shaped both children's understanding of family relationships. Then he leaves again, and we'll still have each other. Nothing Alex does or doesn't do can change the fact that we're a family and we love each other. Jackson looked at his sister, then back at his mother. I think I want to see him, just to see if I remember him right. I want to see him too, Grace decided. I want to see what a daddy looks like. Olivia felt her heart break and heal simultaneously as she realized her children were brave enough to face the father who had abandoned them. Okay, we'll meet him together, and you can decide how much you want him to be part of your lives. When court reconvened, the gallery had grown even larger as word spread about the dramatic custody case and the personal revelations that had emerged. Olivia returned to the bench with Jackson and Grace sitting in the front row, their small faces serious as they prepared to meet their biological father. In the matter of Montgomery versus Montgomery, Olivia began. This court accepts Mr. Montgomery's withdrawal of his custody petition. Therefore, primary custody of Lucas Montgomery remains with his mother, Sophia Montgomery. Sophia closed her eyes with relief as months of legal battles finally ended in her favor. However, Olivia continued, this court recommends supervised visitation for Mr. Montgomery, contingent upon his completion of parenting classes and family therapy. The goal is to help him understand his responsibilities as a father and build a genuine relationship with his son. Alex nodded, accepting the conditions without argument. Furthermore, this court strongly encourages Mr. Montgomery to seek similar therapy and education before attempting to build relationships with any other children he may have fathered and abandoned. Your Honor, Alex said, standing slowly. If I may, there are 2 children in this courtroom who I abandoned 7 years ago. With their mother's permission, I'd like to meet them and begin the long process of earning their forgiveness. Olivia looked at Jackson and Grace, seeing in their faces a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. Jackson and Grace Bennett, would you like to meet Alexander Montgomery? Jackson stood up with the dignity of a boy who had been forced to grow up too quickly. Yes, Your Honor. We would like to meet our biological father. The formal language broke Olivia's heart, but she nodded for Alex to approach the front of the courtroom. Alex walked slowly toward the children he had abandoned as babies, seeing for the first time the human beings they had become. Jackson was tall for his age, with Alex's gray eyes and serious expression. Grace was delicate and artistic, with Olivia's features but Alex's stubborn chin. Jackson, Grace, Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your father. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. Jackson studied Alex with the analytical mind he'd inherited from both parents. You look older than I remembered. You look much older than I remembered too. You've grown into an amazing young man. Mama says you left because you were scared, Grace said, tilting her head to study this stranger who shared her eyes. Your mama is right. I was scared and selfish, and I made the worst mistake of my life when I left you. Are you still scared? Jackson asked. Alex considered the question seriously. Yes, I'm still scared. I'm scared that you won't want to know me. I'm scared that I've missed so much of your lives that I can't ever catch up. I'm scared that I don't deserve your forgiveness. Mama says scared people can learn to be brave if they practice, Grace offered. Your mama is very wise. She's also very strong. She raised you both to be incredible children while I was too much of a coward to even try. Jackson stepped closer to Alex, studying his face with intense concentration. You have the same eyes as me. And you have the same smile as your mother. Grace has her artistic talent too. I can see it in the way she observes everything. Would you like to be our daddy now? Grace asked with the directness that was her trademark. Alex knelt down to their level, his eyes bright with tears. I would like the chance to try to be your father. But I understand if you're not ready for that. I understand if you never want that. We could start with visits, Jackson suggested with the practical nature he'd developed as the protective older brother. Like playdates, but with your dad instead of friends. I would love that more than anything in the world. And if you leave again? Grace asked, her 6-year-old heart already planning for the possibility of abandonment. Then I leave again, and you'll know that some people aren't strong enough to keep their promises. But I'm hoping I've learned to be stronger than I was before. Olivia watched this exchange from the bench, seeing her children navigate their first conversation with their biological father with remarkable maturity and wisdom. They were brave in ways she had never had to be at their age, shaped by abandonment into children who could face difficult truths with grace. Mr. Montgomery, she said formally, if Jackson and Grace are willing to allow supervised visits, those visits can be arranged through the family court system. A social worker will oversee the initial meetings to ensure the children's emotional safety. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve. I'm not giving you a chance, Mr. Montgomery. Jackson and Grace are giving you a chance. Don't waste it. As the courtroom began to clear, Alex approached the bench one final time. Olivia, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know I destroyed our family and hurt you in ways that can't be repaired. But I want you to know that not a day has passed in 7 years that I haven't regretted leaving you. Olivia looked down at the man who had once been her whole world, seeing him clearly for the first time without the filter of love or hate clouding her judgment. Alex, my forgiveness isn't what you need. You need to forgive yourself for the choices you made, and then you need to spend every day proving to Jackson and Grace that you're worthy of their love. And us? Is there any possibility that we could? There is no us, Alex. There's 2 people who share children and who need to figure out how to co-parent effectively. Nothing more. Alex nodded, accepting the boundary she was setting. Will you help me learn how to be their father? I'll help you learn how to be a better person. The father part, you'll have to figure out on your own. 3 months later, Olivia sat in her chambers reviewing case files when Rebecca announced that she had visitors. Send them in. Jackson and Grace entered, followed by Alex, who had been coming for supervised visits twice a week since the custody hearing. The transformation in all 3 of them was remarkable. Alex looked younger somehow, more relaxed, as if the burden of carrying his secrets had been lifted from his shoulders. Jackson and Grace seemed more confident, more secure, as if having answers to their questions about their father had given them peace. Mama, Alex taught me how to throw a curveball, Jackson announced proudly. And he's helping me paint a picture of our family for art class, Grace added. He said I should include everyone who loves me, even if they don't live with us. Olivia smiled at her children's excitement. That sounds wonderful. How are the visits going, Alex? They're the best part of my week, he admitted. Jackson is teaching me about baseball statistics, and Grace is showing me how to see colors the way artists see them. They're incredible kids, Olivia. They are. And they're becoming more secure because they finally have answers to questions they've carried their whole lives. I want to ask you something, Alex said, his voice serious. Jackson's baseball team is playing in the championship game next week. He invited me to come watch. I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with me being there. Olivia studied Alex's face, seeing genuine concern for her comfort rather than entitlement to access. Jackson invited you? He said all the other kids' dads would be there, and he wanted his dad there too. The simple statement hit Olivia with unexpected force. After 8 years of being the only parent in Jackson's life, he was finally able to say my dad and mean it. Then you should be there, she said simply. Olivia, I know this is complicated for you. Watching me try to be the father I should have been from the beginning. If my presence makes things harder, your presence makes things better for Jackson and Grace. That's what matters now. Alex was quiet for a moment, then spoke with the careful honesty he'd been learning in therapy. I've been seeing a counselor to work through my issues with commitment and abandonment. She's helping me understand why I ran away when things got difficult. That's good. Jackson and Grace deserve a father who understands his own behavior. She also helped me understand something else. The way I left you, the way I abandoned our family, it wasn't just about pressure from my parents or fear of responsibility. It was about being too immature to handle real love. Olivia looked up from her paperwork, surprised by the depth of his insight. I sabotaged our relationship because I was terrified of how much I loved you and the children. I was terrified of being vulnerable, of depending on someone else for my happiness. So I chose the safe option of family approval over the scary option of building something real with you. Alex, this conversation isn't necessary. We've moved past the anger and the blame. But I needed you to know that leaving you wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me being too scared to be enough for you. Olivia felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of tension she'd been carrying for 7 years. Thank you for saying that. And I need you to know that watching you raise Jackson and Grace into the amazing people they are, seeing what you've accomplished professionally, understanding the strength it took to rebuild your life after I destroyed it. I'm in awe of you, Olivia. I always was, but I was too immature to handle being with someone stronger than me. I wasn't stronger than you, Alex. I was just more desperate. When you left, I had to become strong because I had 2 children depending on me. You were always strong. I just couldn't see it because I was too focused on my own fears. Jackson and Grace had been listening to this conversation with the serious attention they brought to all adult discussions that affected their family. Are you and Mama going to be friends now? Grace asked hopefully. We're going to be the best co-parents we can be, Olivia answered diplomatically. But not friends like before. Jackson pressed, his analytical mind wanting clarity about family relationships. Alex and Olivia exchanged a look that contained 7 years of history, pain, growth, and the tentative possibility of something new. We're different people than we were before, Alex said carefully. Your mama is an incredible judge and an amazing mother. I'm learning how to be a better father and a better person. Maybe someday we can be friends, but right now we're focused on being good parents to you and Grace. 6 months later, Olivia stood at Jackson's baseball championship game, cheering as her son pitched his team to victory. Beside her in the stands sat Alex, who had learned enough about baseball in 6 months to understand what he was watching and why it mattered. Strike 3. The umpire called, and Jackson's team erupted in celebration as they won the championship. He did it, Alex shouted, jumping to his feet with pride. Jackson did it. Olivia found herself laughing at Alex's enthusiasm, remembering the passionate man she'd fallen in love with in college before life had made him careful and calculating. You're a good father, she told him as they watched Jackson celebrate with his teammates. I'm learning to be. Your kids are good teachers. They're your kids too, Alex. Are they? Really? Olivia looked at the man who had spent 6 months showing up consistently, learning her children's interests, attending their events, and slowly earning their trust. Yes, they're really your kids too. When Jackson ran over to the stands, still wearing his championship medal, he threw his arms around both his parents without thinking about it. Did you see me strike out the last batter? He asked excitedly. We saw everything, Olivia assured him. Dad, did you see how I used the curveball you taught me? I saw it. You were amazing, son. The word son came naturally now, earned through months of consistent presence and genuine care. That evening, as they celebrated at Jackson's favorite pizza restaurant, Grace showed Alex the family portrait she'd been working on for weeks. This is our family, she announced proudly, pointing to the figures she'd painted. There's Mama and Jackson and me. And there's you, Dad, standing with us, but not too close because you're still learning how to be part of our family. Alex studied the painting, seeing himself portrayed as slightly separate from the core family unit, but clearly included in the group. It's perfect, he said, meaning it completely. It shows exactly where we are right now. Maybe next year I can paint you closer, Grace suggested. Maybe next year I'll have earned the right to be closer. As they drove home that night, Jackson and Grace asleep in the back seat of Olivia's car, Alex walked them to the door of the house he'd never seen before. Thank you for tonight, he said quietly. Thank you for letting me be part of Jackson's championship. Thank you for showing up, for being the father they deserve to have all along. Olivia, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think there's any chance that someday we could try again? not picking up where we left off, but starting over as the people we are now. Olivia considered the question, thinking about the man who had abandoned her and the man who now showed up consistently for their children. Ask me again in a year, when you've proven to yourself that you can be the father Jackson and Grace need, every day, even when it's difficult. And if I can prove that, then we'll see what's possible between two people who've learned to choose love over fear. Alex smiled, accepting the timeline she was offering. I can work with that. 1 year later, Judge Olivia Bennett presided over her final case before taking a 2-week vacation to celebrate Jackson's 9th birthday and Grace's 7th. The courtroom was lighter that day, filled with adoption proceedings and happy families rather than custody battles and broken relationships. Court is adjourned, she announced, banging her gavel with satisfaction as another family was legally united through adoption. As she packed up her files, Rebecca entered with a smile. Your Honor, you have visitors. Jackson, Grace, and Alex entered her chambers carrying a birthday cake and wearing party hats. We brought the party to you since you couldn't leave early, Grace announced, her artistic eye having decorated the cake with elaborate frosting flowers. Dad's idea, Jackson added, grinning at Alex with the easy affection that had developed over months of consistent fatherhood. Actually, it was a family idea, Alex corrected. We all wanted to celebrate with you. Olivia looked at the 3 people who meant the most to her in the world, seeing how they had grown together into something that resembled a family. Make a wish, Mama, Grace instructed as she lit the candles on the cake. Olivia closed her eyes and thought about wishes and second chances and the incredible journey that had brought them all to this moment. 7 years ago, she had been an abandoned single mother struggling to survive. Now she was a successful judge with 2 amazing children and a man who had finally learned how to be worthy of her love. What did you wish for? Jackson asked as she blew out the candles. I wish for things to stay exactly as good as they are right now. That's a boring wish, Grace declared. I would have wished for things to get even better. Olivia looked at Alex, seeing in his eyes the question he'd been carrying for months, the same question he'd asked a year ago. Actually, Grace, I think your wish might be better than mine. Does that mean what I think it means? Alex asked hopefully. It means I think we're ready to see what's possible when 2 people choose each other every day instead of taking each other for granted. Jackson and Grace looked between their parents, sensing that something important was happening. Are you and Dad going to get married? Grace asked with typical directness. We're going to take things very slowly and see if we can build something real together, Olivia answered carefully. But you love each other again, Jackson pressed, his analytical mind wanting clear information. We're learning to love each other as the people we are now, Alex answered. Your mama is an incredible woman who deserves someone who chooses her every day. I'm hoping I've learned how to be that person. You have, Jackson said with the certainty of a child who had watched his father transform over the course of a year. You choose us every day now. And if you choose Mama every day too, then we really will be a family, Grace concluded with the logic that made perfect sense to a 7-year-old. That evening, as they celebrated Jackson's birthday at home, Olivia reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them from abandonment to redemption, from broken family to chosen family, from justice served to love rebuilt. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been assigned to my custody case? Alex asked as they cleaned up after the party. I think the universe has its own way of making sure justice is served and love finds its way home, Olivia replied. Even when people make terrible mistakes. Especially when people make terrible mistakes. Sometimes we have to lose everything to understand what actually matters. Alex nodded, understanding that his abandonment of their family had been the catalyst for both their destruction and their eventual redemption. I love you, Olivia. All of you. I love the family we were, the family we've become, and the family we're still becoming. I love you too, Alex. But more importantly, I trust you. And trust is something that can only be earned through time and consistency. And I've earned it. You've earned the chance to keep earning it every day for the rest of our lives. As they tucked Jackson and Grace into bed that night, both children secure in the knowledge that both their parents would be there in the morning, Olivia realized that justice had indeed been served. Not the harsh justice of punishment and revenge, but the healing justice of accountability, growth, and love rebuilding itself on a foundation of truth. Alexander Montgomery had faced the consequences of his choices in the most perfect way possible, by being given the chance to prove he had learned from his mistakes. And Olivia Bennet had found her own justice in becoming the woman strong enough to offer second chances without sacrificing her children's security. "Sweet dreams," she whispered to Grace as she kissed her goodnight. "Sweet dreams, Mama. I'm glad Dad came back." "Me too, baby. Me too." 7 years after abandonment, 8 months after confrontation, and 1 year after redemption, the Bennet Montgomery family had found their way home to each other. Not because love conquered all, but because some people are brave enough to face their failures and strong enough to rebuild what they've broken. Justice, it turned out, wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes justice was about protection, healing, and the incredible power of a mother's love to create something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. If this story of accountability, redemption, and second chances moved you, share it with someone who believes that people can change when they're given the right motivation. And remember, sometimes the person who breaks your heart is the same person who can help you build something even stronger than what you had before. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't getting even. The best revenge is building a life so beautiful that it makes everything you lost seem small in comparison. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person who hurt you most becomes the person who helps you build that beautiful life. Judge Olivia Bennet had learned that justice comes in many forms. But the sweetest justice of all is when love wins, not because it was easy, but because it was earned.